I'm Pamela. I am Jill's deputy in town.
Bad weather.
Oh.
Did you see that post that I
And
put
I'm
on
trying to get
Facebook for
on
my
the names
grandson?
with the faces.
Oh, yeah.
Half faces.
I mean, I'm so amazed, he just climbed up my sink, got up there and turned the water on and stuck his butt up to it.
Yeah, so grandma laughs, parents are petrified.
Exactly.
You're like, that's so cute. I'm over here like, he's gonna kill himself, but I'm not letting him.
But you know, he only does things with.
We're just waiting on Linda.
Oh, sorry, no one gave us, no one gave us.
She here, but she doing, getting herself together.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
We're just giving Linda a few minutes to get in.
I'm waiting for his voice.
Oh,
Some of the little ones.
they're coming.
Oh, 6 months.
Oh, yeah, usually two is bad for me.
6 months early. Oh, yeah.
Everybody else. We can just like stick it on the wall or.
Hey, Linda.
Hi.
So are we good, everyone? All right. So I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. I have 6:01 p.m. We can call stand and start the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you put the name of the take roll call first, please?
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Reed, Jackson,
Here.
Lawler,
Here.
Lanu,
Here.
Williamson,
Yeah.
and Mayor Snyder.
Here. All right, so we're gathered tonight to go over council goals for 2021. So we can go ahead, Linda did bring in whiteboards so that we can kind of keep track. Like I said before, we may have overlapping goals. When we kind of put together our own set. So this is a great opportunity for us to come together to kind of discuss the goals and figure out how we can possibly group them so that they can be more streamlined. So we have SMART goals, council goals, and then our city manager goals. Does anybody want to begin?
If I may, I can put on the memo that was sent out to everyone earlier today. I apologize for getting this out with such short notice, but moving forward, you will have this with enough time to review before we get to the study session. I just wanted to kind of provide council with a list of priorities that city administration has identified that need to be addressed within the next year or so. Generally, when you set goals for the fiscal year, they should tie in with your current budget year as well as guide you in preparing the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. So with that, I just provided you with a list, as I said, of priorities that we feel should be included in tonight's discussion.
So did everybody get a chance to review city manager Snyder's list of goals? Okay. So, Liz, do you want to put like the board up and we can get moving? You think that's gonna be easy to write on?
Yeah, I can, and I was also going to post it out to just to keep it moving. And then just with the SMART goals being the first, I sent that over just as a template for us to streamline and have the deadlines and
make sure everything is realistic, so just as a framework to put all the goals into. That was all the SMART goals was intended from my, on my behalf.
Okay. So for our seasoned council members, we had, as a group, done this before, correct? And this was just done last year. So the goals that were put in place, were we able to satisfy those goals? So that, I don't know, I just want to know, do we need to revisit some of those? Or do we have recollection?
Well, most of the goals that were put in place were, some were not satisfied, and because of the fact of, when we did put things in place and decided to go in a direction, then we had a new city manager, and we had some disruptions that happened. So they were never brought back around full circle. They were kind of still small.
Well, and some of the previous goals weren't measurable, they were just fix the roads or give them, make this plan, or it wasn't, there wasn't a date or a action step that was even gradable. I mean, I think number one was actually fix the road, and I don't think, there's been a couple, I don't want to discredit, but we didn't fix all of them or get even near that, so I like the idea of putting some firm action stuff. One of the things I was going to offer up was maybe if we could bucket the goal things into because I was looking at the priority sheet that City Manager sent out. I thought, okay, well, there's very clearly a city infrastructure piece to this. So that includes the water, that includes the physical plant at City Hall, and it does include roads to a certain extent. We have to prioritize what streets are going to get fixed next with our yearly allocation from the state for road funding, which we know is roughly about $1 million a year. So anyway, so I thought, infrastructure
As one category.
and then that would break out into the water, water, sewer, road, physical plan. So that's the suggestion. We don't have to keep those, but I thought city infrastructure made sense.
So we had 3 papers with these.
I guess.
So Linda, do you maybe want to put up a sheet that says like infrastructure? And that way we can, okay, I see public infrastructure.
Water, sewer, and road.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, it was just kind of hard to read from this angle.
My penmanship might not be
Okay.
very easy to read.
And then I think another bucket, if we wanted to continue at least putting buckets before we put specifics, I think another bucket all by itself is parks and recreation. Because that includes setting the priorities for the Y who we're contracting with, making sure that we're holding them accountable to providing really good recreation services. And then there's this park infrastructure plan that we need to have in place. I noted that as one of the things in the city managers, but that's more important, not just to have it in place for the city, but to have it in place for the state, so we can be funded for certain projects. So I thought parks and recreation is all by itself in its own bucket.
And Councilman Reed, I wasn't sure, were you gonna make a comment around the same time, Councilman Clark?
No.
Okay. Yes, Councilman Miller.
So when we get all our goals together and put them in buckets, I think that we should at least find out who we can get to help us with it in a timeline. Would that be okay? Who can possibly help us? Like, so say, okay, one of the goals is housing. We put down housing, okay. Who can we get to help us with housing? You know, whether it be one of the entities or whoever, we can come up with to try to help us with it and put like a timeline to it. That way we can try to stay on track a little bit better.
Okay,
than we have been.
I mean, you can definitely put that down as like notes to,
Yeah, so the goals that council set, essentially, the department heads and city staff, we will be working to achieve the goals that you identified tonight. So whether that means we need to partner with EDC or other agencies to make these goals happen, that's our job to make sure that we achieve the goals that are identified.
Okay.
That's actually really good to hear. I appreciate that because that's helping us. Again, our role in the goal setting process is putting out the big goals. And the role of city admin is to carry that forward and come up with a plan for executing. That, I really appreciate that distinction, and that's gonna help us, one, to keep this tangible and able to be completed in line. And then it allows the freedom of all these people that we hired to work here to take the plan, which would be really exciting.
Councilman.
Okay, I guess the way we did it before, was we did it not as just council, we, after council got ours, then citizens were invited into. And we did it over there, and we put those things along the wall, everybody had their sheets like you got, and you can jot on there what you think should go up under that head. So.
If I may, Councilmember Reed, we will do something similar to that when we go to update our comprehensive plan, is that's where we will seek all of the input from the community on what is the vision our community moves forward for the next 5 to 10 years. So we will have different areas that we'd like to focus on, and then the community will be able to provide that input. So that is coming, yes, for the comprehensive plan.
So Councilwoman, I guess for another bucket that I would like to see, and I think others, like I was saying, I think others also put it down on their goals, is having some sort of communication plan with the citizens.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah, bear with me and the gravity. So I just started putting down things that I saw previously that were related to current things that weren't accomplished. So rental certification, housing, groceries and fresh food access, employment and entrepreneurship were additional goals that I didn't see reflected in these buckets, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think that's great. I think
Yeah.
several.
Yes, Councilman Mason.
So one of the things that's kind of been left over from the last, that actually had some really great traction during the last council, was looking at code enforcement and rental certification policies. I'm wondering if in its own bucket, we can talk about city policy and code enforcement and group it together around all policy, like ordinances and enforcement. So we can, and then under that, develop enforcement priorities, because if we can't enforce everything at once to change the outcome of what we want, right? Like, we want a more beautiful city, we want more code compliant businesses and landlords. So what we need to do is hopefully develop a priority of what code we enforce first, and help our police force and our code enforcement officer have those priorities. Is that well within our role here? Okay.
Well, and perfect timing with you bringing that up, because I'm not sure the rest of you are getting inundated with calls and emails about dogs. And and so I've already got Chief Pip looked in on this, and I think he's got Colin looked in on this about what are we doing with the dog population, so. Perfect timing. Okay,
So are we kind of just identifying buckets and then we'll break the buckets out and put?
Yes.
Okay, we're good.
yes, Councilman Jackson, you have your hand up, or you just holding, okay.
You're like, yeah.
Councilman Clark, you have your hand up.
Yeah, one of the things that, this would be more part of the EDC is, also the growth of business other than this area down here, to start looking at the Austin Street area and also the H Street area and down Beamer Street, because that's right off the highway. And we should have visibility like most cities do, right from the highway that draws and attracts people in. And we've got that whole stretch that's got land that's for sale and things like that. So the marketing piece of how we're gonna start to do that is very, very important.
Councilmember Clark, I am saying equitable redevelopment plans. I'm
Yes.
trying to just capture it as you're going, but we can obviously keep, burrowing down into the detail.
Councilman Lindsay?
I was gonna add, I think it's important we look at our time and gown relationship with the college. And make that a priority for the city manager. I, like many of you, have seen snippets of things that the college is doing that improve community spaces. And I think we need to, if that's gonna be something that's gonna be happening, I think we need to make it a priority for city council and for the city manager to work on the college community relationship. So I would really like to see that be on the priority list. We need to invite the college into this relationship and working with us rather than working side by side and not really talking.
I put community and college relations,
Yes.
which I feel like goes under communications
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
I would keep it separate, and I would have to
Yeah.
expand not only Elgin College, but Marshall Public Schools as well.
And the landmark. Very much so.
We've tried to keep people 6 feet apart, and I know there's lots of people that are vaccinated in here. Those masks make it very difficult to hear through the mics on the camera, so.
So
When
we're
we're not talking, it's best that you take your mask down.
So go ahead, sorry.
Just with regard to the land, maybe like the regional institutions, whether that's county government, state government, in terms of that relationship. I'll say like regional institutions.
or anchor institutions in the community.
Yes, Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. What about, the neighborhood enhancement program?
So that's like commissioner, the state government, absolutely, and that would be, so these, I think, really go together very well, because that's housing, so I'll put that under housing. Mishta, NEP, NEP.
And that,
Veterans?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Councilman Jackson.
I don't understand why you guys don't know what to communicate. And then you want to, how you want those two to be different, the communication with,
So I think, I would just say, I would say that's a fundamental part. This is part of everything, but maybe it's separate because it's also getting the programs to people, evaluating how it's going. It's like more than just that initial point of contact. So that's why it would be separate.
And Councilman Jackson, if you don't, are not comfortable taking your mask off, you might want to raise your mic.
oh.
The mic doesn't work, the mic's in.
No, I'm comfortable with it. I just so used to keeping it on, talking all day long. So, I guess, so what is that wording that's underneath the yellow? Saying community what, communication what?
Oh, so
No,
this
sorry,
is,
no, sweetheart, up here at the top. What does that say?
so this is equitable redevelopment plans. We have housing with the specific programs for specific groups. And then I put groceries and fresh food access, because the grocery store was on our 2019 goals. And the food access has really expanded, but there's still the fresh food gap. And then the employment and entrepreneurship in terms of increasing our prosperity, our income, and just, baseline.
No, what is underneath? Yeah. what
This
is-
one?
No, the next market, community. what does that say?
Community.
Uh,
So that was really, in my mind, that was supposed to be like city hall with the college, but the community, and then the local K-12 institutions. the regional letters.
I would label that one as intergovernmental relations.
Okay,
That's what I'm asking y'all, what was the difference between community?
The communications plan is more so our internal plan on how we
I
plan.
understand it
as-
now, yeah.
Okay, and then, yeah, I would classify that as intergovernmental relations.
Councilman,
I understood the communications plan piece is how we get information out to the public, right? So this, okay, great, I just wanted to. That's why I understood it to be separate. Because we don't really have a good system of getting information to people about what's going on.
Yes.
And we've known this for a long time, and we're not really something about it.
so I had, senior citizen services, but I'm not sure what bucket that should fall in. I don't wanna miss them.
I'll add a sticker for the redevelopment.
You could have aging in place senior services.
It's a year.
Okay,
I think people expect it.
okay. Or would we want to tie Fort Senior Center into the intergovernmental relations? Just to
Yeah.
build that. Since they technically are Calhoun County Senior Services too.
I really liked it under equitable redevelopment plans. And I'll say why, but again, no one has to agree with me. I liked it under equitable redevelopment plans because as we work to, you know, build new spaces in the community, and as we're kind of retrofitting places, and as we're adding more, accessibility is the biggest thing for our aging population. And so making it, when you make something equitable for many people, same thing for aging in place. So if you design a building for an older person, you'd actually design it for a person with a baby or a family with other types of mobility issues. So that was my only argument for putting it under redevelopment plans. It could be in something, but I think it fits really well with the other items that are underneath the redevelopment piece.
And and just to City Manager Snyder's point, there are quite a few resources, so that's why in my mind, communications comes first. We need to have an inventory and index of what's here, and then it can reach people better, because a lot of things that we think that we need, we have, and it was just that lack of awareness. That's what I found. It is really hard to get it to people in these singular ways if you're not coordinated. So I think under communications, there's indexing, asset mapping, and then data research. What are our actual needs? How much do we really need in terms of the different portions of redevelopment? I haven't been able to find a lot of information to know like where we're at, and then the pandemic also worsened a lot of things. So I'm just gonna add that under here. And then I think this is a really strong list. I think to Councilmember Lawler's point, getting like those partnerships is really where we were going in terms of how this is gonna happen. And then we can add those timelines, how quickly we see this being possible. Especially in terms of the staff's capacity to support us and how we can collaborate.
Ms. Thompson.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna add my opinion in the next question. So we have really great buckets, and I think the next step is like, we take one bucket and say, here's some things we'd like done under that bucket, and we do it for each one, right? And this is really a question for City Manager Haley and also the rest of the council. Would we be comfortable in saying, when we get done with these buckets and these priorities under each bucket, would we be comfortable in tasking the city manager with coming back to us with a timeline for the next year of how we want to achieve these goals? Because I want to set a precedent for leaving the experts at City Hall with the responsibility to bring to council how we can get things done. And so if we say, we come up with this list of, it could be up to 50 different individual priorities. We say, okay, City Manager Snyder, take staff to your team, come back to us at the next council meeting or within 2 council meetings or something, and say, how do we want to get this done? What do you see a timeline around this? And are any of these absolutely unreasonable? And then we can have another discussion. And that doesn't delay us from passing these as priorities, but it allows us to rely on people who are going to be doing it to bring back the timeline. Is that something that people on council feel comfortable with? And is that something that the city manager feels comfortable with? That's what I want to know.
Yes, I would actually prefer that we do it that way, just as I noted previously. The goals that you said, it is essentially our job to make sure that we figure out how to make these happen. So yes, I think whatever goals that you identified tonight, we can take it back, discuss with department heads and different departments within the city, and we can identify a timeline on how we can make this happen.
Councilman Clark.
I agree with that, but I also think that there should, for transparency, that there should be a council member also attached to all these different,
Buckets.
buckets, and people that will be involved with making it move forward. Just because, the only reason why I say that is because a lot of times things are heard differently from the city manager side than from someone that's just maybe basically listening to the residents and what they've heard them say, and then hear how it's being defined and decided on the other side. You know what I'm saying? It gives an opportunity to be able to probe and put some other suggestions in as a mindset. For instance, like EDC. So if somebody's there on EDC, going to the meetings, like I'm planning to start going to the meetings, irregardless of what happens, just so I can hear what the movement is and how it's going forward and things like that. So when other things come up to me, I'll be able to say, oh, well, I know why that happened, or I know why that's not happening, or you need to wait because some things are going to happen. You know, everything can't be shared, and I understand that, but for transparency reasons, because a lot of times, the reason why I feel like that is a lot of times things come back full circle, and maybe somebody hasn't had a chance to talk or discuss things. And it kind of makes you feel like you're out of it. You understand what I'm saying? Like you're not a part of it. And I think that as representatives of the city, that we should be a part of it a lot more than what's going on than what we have. Not necessarily leading it, just being a part of it and listening. That's all I'm saying.
I was gonna say, whatever. So city manager, Mary, do you want to respond or do you want to go to councilman Lynn?
Thank you, Mayor Snyder. I want to also add, I think that in my mind, what I'm grappling with, and I think it's very similar to Councilmember Clark, is what is our role? You know, we see all of this, we've been elected, we have our own skill set. What role do we play in supporting the city staff? And so I think that our roles should be parallel, and if there's a way to distinguish our roles, you know, that really helps us in terms of being able to support the whole, you know, implementation of this work. And so for me, I've taken it, I just realized I spelled communications wrong. I've taken it to be communications, that liaison, that, because people call you wanting to know things. And so, you know, that's where I see the importance of us being kept as current as possible in terms of what's the progress, where's this at, and being that liaison internally. But we all have our own capacity, our own skills too. So just like working with each of us and where we want to support is what I'm seeing.
And if I may, the role of the city manager is to serve as that liaison between council and then between council and the city staff. So your role is to set goals for myself as well as department heads to achieve during that fiscal year and the upcoming fiscal year. With that, it is my role then to report back to you twice a month at our council meetings to provide updates on where we're at, what's happening here at City Hall. So if we feel like we're not getting that information, then that falls on, unfortunately, that's on me. I think we have to get back to understanding what the roles are and really stay within those lanes of council member and then city administration, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so we can ask, like, when we have time to create the agenda and when we have time to say, at the next meeting, I would like an update on such and such. And that way she is able to pull that information for us and report it back to us. So, I mean, that is the city manager's position, to be in charge of all the directors. And the directors are the ones who specific to like Parks and Rec, that's different than the person who may be in charge of communication. So that's, yeah, but like, you know, I was saying, we're the ones that are getting the feedback from our constituents. Then we bring these issues, questions, concerns to the council meeting, and that's where we get hopefully questions answered, and if not, then it could be provide some type of direction for city managers rather than to take that to their directors. Councilman Wings.
Can I add something? Can I add something?
Yes.
Without a mask on. So I actually like Council Member Clark's idea of each of us kind of taking one of these buckets and having a fair baby, like monitor it, stay involved with it. Like I could see myself really like being involved in the implementation piece of the code enforcement and policy, because I'm a policy guy, I like that type of thing. What I was going to say is that we've gotten really comfortable in Albion, where if something goes wrong, oh, well, I know Shane, let me just call him, he'll go figure out where that road sign went, or can I get this pothole filled, or this city employee knocked over this tree on this property, I'm tired of looking at it. And then what happens is Councilmember Shane, calls Haley, and then inevitably someone will go figure it out. I think part of the communications piece when we get to that bucket will be effectively communicating with the public how this all works. Because communication is a two-way street, it isn't just getting information out, it's pulling it in. And part of our jobs on council will be to educate our constituents about how we properly access city channels to get things done. Because in the moment when something feels like it's just there, my basement's flooded, or my yard is flooded, or something happened, there's probably 10 more situations like that, and so they have to get the key. So I think this is really productive tonight in kind of defining our roles as we go. I'm really excited about that. But I also think that there's room for our council members to individually be part of these as much or as little as they want to be. And I want to say, I love the idea of having the timeline come back to council, because these goals, what we did with the goals last time, we didn't even look at them really too often. But now we can, if they come back to the timeline, we can regularly have the council goals printed in the packet and kind of show a metric of where we are in achieving these goals. And that is progress we have not had in a long time. So this is good work. Thank you.
So Councilwoman Lanu, how many buckets you say we have it?
I think that, it depends on how City Manager Snyder wants to orchestrate the work, because when I looked through your goals, I saw like 3 big things. So I saw the replacement and redevelopment of City Hall itself, which, maybe that's part of public infrastructure and city policy implementation. I could see those going together. I think Parks and Rec is definitely its own, but it certainly, improves a lot of other things. I think it just depends on how we want to do it, but I think that there needs to be very focused attention on the communications, and that's going to take a long time. I think that should be its own, that influences these others. And then I think some of these are like pretty large goals, like the redevelopment plans, like that's part of comprehensive planning, that's part of relationship building, that just like takes time. I don't know. But yeah, I think all of us should weigh in on what they see as like the top buckets, because I think differently than most people in terms of planning. And if you can't read this, I'm very sorry, but I can make it bigger if you want me to space it out at all. Or I can read it to you. So we have public infrastructure with water, sewer, and roads, which were on the city manager's goals for this year. Parks and recreation. Our communications plan with some like key places to start in terms of how that not only helps us, but also helps us get grants and further funding. The city's policy and like the implementation, revisiting that. We have a lot of things. I think that I've heard Councilmember Reed talking about cars parked illegally, dumping, public works. I know sidewalks and trees have been big issues. So those are all sort of things that I've heard and just wanted to reflect in terms of the policy. And then with our redevelopment, there's the accessibility, the aging in place for senior services, housing, groceries, employment, and then for our relationships and partnerships, I just started listing the partners.
If I could, yeah, I think those are good. We just leave them as those are our 6 or 7, however many buckets. And then within those, we identify 1 to 2 measurable goals that we can achieve within this year and then maybe the upcoming next year.
Right. That's Councilman Clinton.
There was one more, I'm sorry, Haley, because I know I'm gonna add to your list here, I apologize in advance, but I think I'm gonna have a lot of heads down in my cities. I think the 7th and final bucket would be resource development and or grants. That's something that everybody on council has talked about, like as a priority for the city. And while I don't want to get into the specifics of individual grants that the city is going to write, I think it's good to set a goal that the city will be seeking out at least, 2 to 4 outside funding opportunities to support public projects. Something, we gotta do something and set it as a priority. And then Ms. Snyder can bring it back and say how she's gonna execute. But I thought that is something I've heard everybody around this table say is important. And I think if that's important to all of us, I'm sure it's important to others, and we should take it a priority.
Yes, Councilor Rowan.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. For, I see she has the regional partners under senior services. Do you think that the PACE Center could be involved in it in some kind of way, or does that go under senior services also? But that's 2 different things, right? 2 different people, organizations, right?
So they are, but I
Yes,
believe
awesome.
they work closely hand in hand. So the Galvin County Senior Services, their central office works closely with all of the
Like the
senior.
sports center?
Yep.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
And in my mind, like, that's like a resource that we would make sure everybody has access to, everybody's aware of.
Councilor Lily, what's that bottom one?
This one?
Yeah.
So
No,
it's
it's another page, I'm sorry.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
It says grant writing or resource and funding development. So you mentioned going into like specific details, I was just gonna start writing what we see.
Mayor, if I may, since public infrastructure is one, I think the most important one, everyone can agree that our roads need to be addressed. Our engineer firm, Whiteman and Associates, they have created a transportation asset management plan. However, the next and final piece of this plan is to identify how are we going to fund these repairs. The current millage that we have in place is 3 mills. We bring in roughly $247,000 each year that goes towards all roads here in our community. Obviously, that's not coming yet. The other funding that's available, we get our portion from the state and Act 51. I know you've heard Commissioner Tompkins speak on this pretty much, I think, at the end of every council meeting. That formula needs to be addressed, but until it is addressed at the state level to increase the funds that come to local government, we need to look at additional funding sources. With that, I think I will, if we do identify this as a goal, or if not, I will be bringing forward recommendations on looking at whether it be a potential second millage, that a local street millage that goes solely for our local roads, the roads that we drive on every day, or some other options, but we have to identify the funding to address the repairs that have been identified in the transportation asset management plan. So for that, I would say the goal would be to determine funding for initial 3 to 4 year window of the TAMP or the transportation asset management.
Got it. Councilor, Clayton.
So it's been extremely helpful actually having sticky notes up. Could we just do a sticky note for each bucket and just start putting the list underneath?
Like a big one, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll help you, I'll come up and write, so you don't have to go through
Okay.
the one.
Yeah, I'm like,
Um,
sure, I may have to take this
Okay.
jacket off.
You can participate.
But yeah, this was, if you want to use this for the role, then I just captured what she said. On that small note.
Under that, when we were talking about the road, remember, it was last year, I think it was last year when we were talking about that. We rented this, vehicle, truck, or some kind of machinery that actually took the asphalt from the ground, ground it back up and put it back down. Would that be something also included in that, as far as something that we look at as, should we go ahead and invest in,
Yeah, we're gonna have to, outside of just the, if we do an additional millage or additional assessment, we're gonna need more than one
Yeah.
solution or option to
Yeah.
rely on.
We need some darker shade.
Oh, is it too light? I'm sorry.
All of them highlighter, that's a highlighter too.
I'm colorblind.
That's a
See, the
highlighter.
colorblind person decided to help, right? Okay,
I was
so,
gonna ask you the same thing, but we know.
so we have transportation asset management plan, which includes our road millage and our, road funding plan. What was the second one that I just missed as I was getting caught up?
She just asked that we recently purchased another piece of equipment,
Okay.
and utilize that to address some of the road concerns as well.
The other thing I thought, sorry. I just broke the rules when I'm standing up.
Yeah.
From the priorities, I saw, the water and wastewater pieces. So I thought we could combine into one, water rate analysis and then wastewater treatment improvements. Does that make sense? Since we know that it has to happen. Oh, that's not gonna be much better, but we'll get there. Don't worry.
Good word.
Is it worse?
So you too glad.
It's a highlighter.
Yeah, or
So we're just looking at like 2 to 3 in each bucket, or?
You can have more than 2 to 3, especially if some of these are kind of built into the budget already. Like I was looking, I was like, oh, city hall accessibility, right? Like the window for, that might be. Oh, good, yeah, good, thank you. You can, I mean, you can put as many as you want. I mean, 2 to 3 is a good number because it's.
Yeah, because you want it to be a team.
Right. You could say like city hall improvements / accessibility, and that covers, because then they don't have to do all of them, they can identify the ones they can complete within the year. I think council, would say that accessibility is probably the most important piece, right? So making sure that whatever we do for city hall upgrades, that accessibility is the first most important. Is there anything else on public infrastructure? / city hall?
We've got the water, sewer, road,
Okay,
city hall.
so next is parks and recreation.
I think the one is update the 5-year master plan.
So,
Yes, Councilor.
are we doing our goals or are we putting our goals together?
We're putting it all together, yeah.
Putting your goals with ours too? Okay.
Our goals are her goals.
No, I was just saying because I know she had a set that she wanted to work on, and then I was thinking we had a set we wanted her to work on, but if that's how y'all do it, that's okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we're, like, if you have anything specific that you would like to see accomplished, and if that falls within, you know, what everybody else.
I was gonna put the dams feasibility study under this one. If that's okay.
Yeah, that could either go under that or infrastructure.
I was gonna say, I thought that'd be under infrastructure.
See, that's fun, this is why study sessions are better. Anything else?
Councilman Waller, is there anything specific you want to see in the parks?
I was just trying to distinguish, was this council goals or council and city manager goals? That's all.
I guess I would like to see more regular updates about recreation since we signed the Y contract. I would like to know, like, I would like to see kind of quarterly kind of updates or some sort of, what's the year plan for programming at the recreation, so like the recreation, plan.
Well, we all will, maybe we did 6 months. I think,
Councilman Jackson, I couldn't understand you, so.
I'm sorry, I said I'm quite, I apologize, I said I'm quite sure that we all want to see that. But I was saying that maybe we can do, let them do 6 months versus a year, but what they're different, things they need to do far as fixing up that building.
What building are you speaking of?
You said my recreation, but YMCA,
Yeah,
because there's a lot of things they need to continue to get repaired, renewed, to make it where it's bigger and more rooms can be allocated to do more sports and activities for everyone.
okay. So are you talking about Washington Garden for right now, or?
Because we don't actually have a Y center.
Right.
Okay.
We just contract them for recreation.
And so she's just utilizing whatever space she can
Right,
find, yeah.
I forgot, we got.
Nora got ahead of herself, she's ready for a Y center, she's like, "Hey, bring it on, we want it right now, right?"
Yes, Councilman Mark.
As far as parks and recreation, I do wanna see more type of entertainment brought to the city that attracts other people to our city. You know, like when you guys do things at the phone
Okay,
and stuff like that, I would like to see more of a diverse and more entertainment brought here, so some kind of way that it's like, there would be, sort of create revenue, so we could have people that have food trucks or whatever, and put them all out there and then make this more of a attractive place to.
yes, I didn't know where you're going, sorry.
That's okay.
It's okay, it's a study session, can we be a little less formal? Okay, good. So I didn't know quite where you're going, that you got there right. I think that, and if you don't mind, I think that could fall under communications and or policy. Because part of what we gotta do is we want food trucks to be here, so we need to pass ordinances that allow food trucks to be on the road, or we have to create, because we can't really do the programming, right? But there's so much going on, with a really good communications strategy from City Hall, we can make sure everyone knows what's happening and when, and pull people in. So if you don't mind, can we put that under that when we get there? Don't let me forget it.
I won't, I'm gonna write it down. If you don't mind, Jimmy.
It's actually an announcement that's gonna be in this month, next month's newsletter, so that's coming, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I think these things that you're talking about, they're already in the works.
Because,
We just need to be able to like,
Yeah.
communicate that more effectively, so everybody knows what's going on.
Is there anything under parks and recreation that we want to add?
I would like to see, kind of like what we were talking about, like infrastructure, like funding. How do we get funding to keep up the parks? You know, so then we've discussed tennis courts, basketball courts, you know, just the fields. How do we raise money or get money so that we can keep up with the beautiful parks here in DCAP? So
Right,
that
so-
they can be utilized to its capacity.
I think each of these buckets is gonna have a component like that.
Yeah.
And for parks specifically, right, like, yeah, let's put it there. And then we'll also put it under the resource development piece too, just for fun, right?
So a big piece for me in all of this is like the documentation, like you were saying, with like your plan and report. How is this reaching our residents?
Mhm.
Like how many Albion residents are benefiting? And kind of tracking that, I think that that's going to be very important, again, for everything, but especially with the new plans.
Like a plan for tracking utilization.
Yeah, specifically for Albion residents, so we can see how many of our residents. And like from that, you know, see, track how, if it goes up or down.
And I know this would probably something that the chamber would normally probably take charge of, like promoting what our parks
We just need
can
to,
offer.
yeah, we need to jump right here. Can we
Yeah.
get another, do we have another piece of paper? We need to just get there. We're all wanting to be there. Let's just get there. Oh, sorry.
You know, they're like capacity and working in Jackson, there's so many people in Jackson who I know come to Victor's Park to use the disc golf. And just, how do we promote that? And like, you guys could have tournaments, you could be bringing in tons of people every weekend.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Instead of just having things, let's utilize it so it'll benefit us in some type of way. Like the festival of course, it's a big event, but it benefits in a whole lot of different ways when we have that. And you know, even with the YMCA starting to get more involved in children, they talked about having more programs for the youth. Like we had when we were kids, learn and play. And I think we were supposed to be checking to find out if that was still something that we could do legally. Because there were some questions about children work, children labor laws and things like that, and it never went anywhere. You know, to find out if we could still do those type of things. Because you know, it would be a whole day event in the summertime where parents didn't have to worry about babysitters. And they got lunch and do you remember that program? Okay, and so, you know, just looking at those kind of things, then it benefits us because wow, the parks get clean. Because the children are doing it, because it's an earn, learn, and play program. And then you can take it at another level where there's teams. And if we have, they would have contractors help people paint people's houses and things like that. And it's still an earn, learn, and play thing. It's also teaching a skill. So, yeah.
Councilmember Clark, I would see that with our employment entrepreneurship goal for workforce development. The Earn, Learn, and Play program.
I think it's more on the recreation.
Okay,
That's where it was before.
okay,
It wasn't in.
okay, so that's
Yes.
the recreation, okay.
Right.
Because he put up communication, so I was confused where we were going.
So we're going back here, you want that kind of identifying our key programs.
Yeah.
I know that they did run that program in 2019. Not what you're describing, but a continuation of something similar.
And it was small though.
So I wanted to come back to what the mayor was saying about the communications plan and about, because she had mentioned the chamber usually has a role in this. So maybe the city's role is pulling together, maybe convening a work group to talk about city-wide promotion, because then that gives the city manager the ability to pull, you know, we're coming out of COVID at some point this year, right? Like we're all crossing our fingers. This gives the city manager the opportunity to pull that the chamber and the DDA and the downtown marketing group and the folks together and to see what resources we have outside of just our budget, but to do big promotions. Does that capture the spirit of what you're looking for? Okay.
And please don't forget, when we're asking for funding, there is so much money available for them. For children's and programs and stuff like that.
I'm gonna add that part of KCP to the list.
That's a good idea to have a list of partnerships.
I mean, the point of this was just to capture like the big, and then this would be very.
It's like Siri.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kellogg.
And it's gonna
That's what
be,
it
this
is.
will Foundation, community foundation.
The Kellogg.
Can be route to kind of digest before they come together.
I don't remember KCC.
No,
I'm the college, but I'm the foundation, I'm sorry.
We have two.
Perfect.
So,
And the brand strategy.
so I was gonna say, she made a correction to the Kellogg Foundation, not KCC.
Kellogg Foundation.
Yes.
KKF, or the.
Yeah.
Can you read that one, Shane?
This one, oh, the little under, it says we have a marketing and communications plan that the city's already done that could help
And the.
drive this group's work. There's already a framework for what they're doing, which is awesome. But it may need tweaking.
Councilman Long?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Is there also communications in there for, we have a plan to get it out to seniors?
So that was gonna be that was my next input on this. I was gonna talk about making sure we identify key constituency groups that are lacking in getting information from City Hall.
Can I go back to having precinct meetings? I think we have the monthly city council meetings where we share what's happening at the city level, but as council members, then I think when you have your individual precinct meetings, you are then able to engage with your resident or constituents who you ultimately were elected by. And then you can relay the information that you are getting from the different meetings that you attend.
Yes.
It can be more than council meetings though, because some of them may not come out. I mean, the other ones that I've done over the years, I might get maybe 10 people.
Yeah.
But then I would have to send out, do my newsletter. But I'm just saying, like, when we do something in here, you know, I can always take it back to the, to my precinct, but you know, it might take me a while. So I'm just thinking from.
I'm thinking, because I know I've seen this on many, their goals was having town hall meetings. I think if we, like Shane was saying, fingers crossed, if we can get back to somewhat some normalcy, being able to have maybe quarterly or twice a year town hall meetings. But Councilman Reed, were you looking in a different
That's
direction?
what we have when Mrs. Mitchell was here. And we had them like every 2 months. And they lasted hour and a half. But then you can also invite in, because everything's not happening in there, Alvin. They used to invite in the people, county commissioner in, senators would come in. They would tell us the things that's going on in Lansing, what's being done and stuff like that. Plus you could also discuss problems or things that were going well in your city. So it's not just you're going to be discussing what's going on with council. It's bringing in other things that's outside of council too, that might give you a thought of how you can help your city progress on this.
Yeah. So
I like those better than I like each individual, because I agree with my COLA. I started having, I might have 6 people, I might have 10 people, you know, and still you had to try to get the word out to those that didn't come.
Shane, can you put down the town hall meetings?
Town hall meetings?
Councilman Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Senator. I agree. It can be pretty resource intensive in terms of your time and, you know, effort that you're already putting in as basically a volunteer. And we have a small town and like these issues are interconnected. So I'm all for supporting and then doing what we can within our precinct, but not having to have the burden be on us to bring people together. I think that when I'm hearing about the seniors is this whole notion of like how people access information. And if it comes in the mail to them, are they checking their mail? Are they reading it? Is that how they prefer to get information? And I think that I'm seeing that already in my precinct with the M99 project. If people would have gotten something in the mail, this would be a different situation. So I think that that's something that we need to acknowledge, is that reaching people via like hard copy in the mail is an essential thing for our community. We have older people, we have people who don't prefer to be online. And so that's something I think we need to invest in, is like physical newsletters reaching people, or partnership. I know one of the biggest roles that I've played coming back here is providing the general guide to Albion, and we partner with the local newspapers, sending it out in the free newspapers to make sure people get that. And so there's already resources in terms of communications that I think the more we build on what's here, the greater traction you'll get in terms of expanding it.
Can I add to that for a minute, and then you can tell me if it doesn't relate, and then just can I just add to it, see too, because I was on the other end of the spectrum, thinking about all the people who like electronic communication. I don't think either end is getting what they want right now. The people who enjoy paper and the people who live and die by their mobile device. So I'm wondering out loud, so just bear with me. I'm wondering, is there an opportunity for the city to identify a couple of communication methods that work and bring them to council to talk about, like, there are apps out there, and I want this to be both, I want this to be both digital and print. But I don't know what the answer is, I don't think you do either necessarily. So what if we identify goals, we're gonna identify key communication methods and bring a communication plan to council.
And I would just say that like, everything is going to, it's the agility of whatever method we have that makes it effective. So it's not just gonna be one thing permanently.
Right, it's not just gonna be me getting on an app sign or an email
Yeah.
or getting something by
It's
mail, but
exercising all the methods and then tracking that so you see, and if like you're hearing from people, I'm not getting it, then we need to take that into consideration and change to like continual improvement of methodology.
No, you just made a face like you had a.
no, I'm not gonna write anything down until we're okay with what we want, what.
No, I was good with that. But I was trying to figure out, going back to your first bullet though, like you said, there's already something in place.
For like a marketing and promotional, like, get out and come to Albion and come see us and come experience our parks and things. This is more like,
Okay,
my leaves never get picked up and Granger really is making me upset and this cat, is, having babies in my yard or whatever, identifying that ways that the city, so residents can communicate with the city and we can communicate with them. Does that make sense?
no, definitely. And so, in Councilman Lemieux, I think we touched upon, again, some of the resources or other agencies that we could utilize, like the newspapers, the Recorder, the Advisor, the Chronicle.
The water bills.
Water bills.
Water bills, yes.
We done that for a while.
Does that look good? Identify key resident communication methods and develop a plan.
The morning star.
And I think I want to make sure we acknowledge this thing too, just from my standpoint, that some of this is going to require investment.
Exactly.
An investment that we may not have budgeted for yet.
Yeah.
So in addition to resource funding, there may be budget amendments that have to come this year to fulfill some of these goals. And so I just want to make sure we know that as the.
But at least we can recognize what we can use now, and then like, let's put maybe like 2 to 3 years out as to putting in the budget so that we can incorporate.
But we still can look for funding in the meantime.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not, but we're not limiting, and we're not anticipating that this will get done, like certain things will come within this year because we really don't have the money. Yeah.
Right, like if Haley says at the next, if City Manager Snyder says at the next council meeting, like, okay, this is gonna take a little longer than a year, here's the timeline on that, this is what I know I can get done this year. That means in a year, we're gonna judge on what we thought was reasonable and be done, not that it's not completely.
I think we're good there.
Yeah.
I love that.
Let's look it. We're gonna up.
So, the last one is policy.
Communication plan for right now. Can we start getting out the message about, the city cleanup? That needs to be going out every single day. Because as I was going around doing COVID sign up, we need cleanup. And so, and if people, and I keep forgetting my own self, what day it is. So if people start knowing now that, I think it's in July.
June 26th.
When?
June 26th.
Mrs. Reed, I know people are already coordinating to do the kind of local, not the big things, but the local cleanup, beautification, and trash pickup on April 10th. I was just notified that people are.
Yeah, all of this information I gave, it will be, it's going to be sent out in the newsletter that will be released either tomorrow or the next day. So
Very
we have that all ready to go.
Good, with reminders.
Yeah.
So, Councilwoman Reed, you're talking about like the big, like you bring in your electronics, your scrap metal.
The big, the one where they have, you take it to the two.
Catch and fill stations.
Yeah.
I think you got catch and fill, right?
No, but that will catch them in here.
Oh.
26.
I was just told that people are gonna do trash pickup. I don't have any of the details, but I can, if it's not already being included, I can make sure that gets out.
But yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so-
So that they can start getting their stuff ready, so on, for them.
So the next one is city policy and enforcement priorities. And what prompted that one was the work that we did last year on rental certification and code enforcement. So I figured the first one would be, I don't want to just keep saying we're gonna make plans, but I would like to know how we're gonna enforce, how we're gonna do code enforcement to promote a more livable community. So like, maybe, because I don't want to decide what the enforcement is going to be. I want to leave that up to city administration because they're on the ground. Does that make sense? But maybe a code enforcement plan / priorities. Because I think before we do anything related to like rental cert, I think we need to try this method first. I think that's something that we found in what we were doing the last few years. So that's my argument, but I'm open to council's.
Councilman Clark.
Yeah, that's what we did find out when we were doing it. And some of our code compliance laws currently don't address what's going on in the city, so we need to revisit what we're doing there, because I know Battle Creek has made some adjustments with their code compliance in the city for the purpose of cleaning up the city. And when I was at home thinking about this, I said, what would be a thing? So like, for instance, here's one right now. We got cars. People got 5, 6, 3, 4 cars just in their driveway, not doing nothing. If they're in their driveways, they're in the backyard, and they're not doing anything. So if these people don't have a way to get these vehicles out of their house or yard or whatever, because they can't afford it, then maybe we can contract with one of these, touch base with one of these companies that go out and pick up your cars, and they pay you $100 to get it out to that.
Well, we could try the
For cancer and well, you also
That's right.
have industries, they donate cars.
And the only reason why I know that's a possible thing, and this is something, is because when I was help manage apartments, we had a clause in our lease that said no vehicle be on the lease for 2 days or 3 days unless you let us know that they were gonna lease it longer, and it would be towed. And we used this service that would come and they paid $90. We use it for scrap. So that's something that maybe we could look at as for the city. It'd be a help on both sides and make sure that we don't violate anything by doing that. But that's it.
Yeah, too. I'm smiling underneath that.
But I know those are certain resources that are available that we don't know about that can happen to help beautify our city. Because we get all this stuff out of here.
I tell clients where to go, because, I have had some cars, and I know, people to contact, and I try to tell them, we'll contact these people, they'll come get it, if it's not running, but it's so hard because they just keep holding on to it, but,
So if it's not running, if it doesn't have license and it's not insured, I don't care how you hold it.
yeah, I would get rid of, I just don't, hey, I got $200 for mine, so money always.
So we need to find, so what I said with that is to make sure we need to revisit what our compliance things are at the point to see where we're at and what can be added or.
Maybe we can put on there, find partnership for an entity like you were saying.
But we gotta make sure we're legal.
Yeah.
Before we go.
Well, if the resident is choosing to get rid of it, that's fine. We can't take it.
Right.
No, yeah.
But the resident just wants to get rid of it. We can find resources for them to get rid of it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But do we provide them information that says contact if you would like to sell?
Right.
So
Yeah, it could be so forth.
Yeah, exactly.
Identify partners that can help with code enforcement, like mitigation, like instead of having to cite this person,
Yeah.
Someone can come in. That makes sense to me. If I spell anything wrong, I'm sorry, I don't know, check.
Just little one, we can't do this.
And that's it.
Because you got her straight.
Yeah, what is
Not as an
that?
example,
Identify partners that can,
alleviate resident burden. I don't know if it's alleviate or alleviate, some grammar person's gonna let me know later.
Just say get it right.
I'm pretty sure that's right. But I think kind of going with that, you know, like we've said before, we're the contact people when citizens complain. So at least for me, cars, that's the biggest complaint, you know, and I'm sure everybody has complaints like that. So, I mean.
Cars, goats,
Yeah.
chickens, you get it all.
Wow,
All right,
on the road, we're down there, yeah. But, you know, that would be something that, you know, city manager Snyder would work with Chief Kip to figure out how do we prioritize
What's first?
Yes.
You know, how, yeah, I envision there, and again, I don't run anyone's department, but I envision a point where we're gonna say, you know what, abandoned cars and cars that don't work are important, let's go around and take care of that, like, let's cite it and get it moving, right?
And what would be very helpful is a list of locations where these are. People expect officers just to notice stuff as they
Yeah,
go
yeah.
by, and they don't always notice those things, and if they're in backyards, they may not ever see them at all,
Yeah.
so. If people can provide me a list of locations, it makes it easy to tell, them, hey, this is where you gotta go deal with it. So.
Yeah. But we also have to make sure that the policies that we do currently have in place can stand and hold water when the owners try to be very sneaky and say, well, I have a for sale sign on it, and then take it down.
Or revisit it.
Whatever you do.
Oh,
Was that
run.
Yes, John.
Just so the council is aware while you're on the subject, I mean, the city has been taking a far more active approach to code enforcement than it has in years past.
Yeah.
Every month when our docket comes up with the court, we have at least 10 code enforcement cases alone. So whether it's trash service or blight or anything, so I mean, there's definitely been a lot more enforcement.
Yes, Councilman Rowland.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. So one of the things I had asked, a while ago, a couple years ago, was like when we go out and we cite people for their cars or their yard or something like that, can we leave them with some information that will say, hey, if you can't, you know, help yourself, these people can. help
Yeah, and
you.
that's what we were talking about, that, you know, with under Chief Kip, like he has now a code enforcement person. So after a certain point, they can leave brochures or information.
That'd be good.
And generally, when they're being issued that citation, they've already received the notices, the resources, and this is like the final notice for them to take action.
So we do send them out
Yes.
resources that can help them.
Okay, good.
And the hardest part about that whole process is that it doesn't happen overnight. It takes weeks to get through to the point where we're actually paying somebody to go do it ourselves, you know, and so that's one of the complaints a lot of people get is the grass will be as tall before we take care of it, but by the time you go through the whole court process and everything we have to do to get there, it just takes time to get to that point.
Yes.
And that's why I was saying something about some of the revisiting some of the laws, because I think about in the current policies that we have in place, if we could put some more stringent things in place as far as, here's another one. So if you drive down the neighborhood and this house is painted and this is all beautiful, and you drive right next door and the next one looks like nobody lives there, but they do. And then you go a little bit further and then nobody does live there and it's abandoned, and it's been abandoned for a while. We had talked about this at one time before about how we can. And I think again, this is Belgrade that is doing this now, but they just put this in place, and you might want to check with Belgrade, where they've got it, where they've changed, the city has changed that if a house has been abandoned for a certain length of time, there's been no utilities in place for a certain length of time, and the property is just, and they're not trying to make any efforts to rent it, then the city can step in at that point. And I don't know what the legal term is or how they're legally wording it, but they take possession of it to keep their houses from becoming, looking the way ours do, because they've been abandoned for so many years. So there's something that they just put in their, code, I don't know if it's under their code enforcement, or if it's something else that they added, I don't know, but I know that they, because I was talking to neighbor 8, and that's how I found out about what's a lot of things that's going on. And they just did that, so that's why I think we need to like revisit and see what we can change and what's possible for us to change, so we can beautify our cities. And when we start paving places and stuff like that, and get to making everything, and you're right through it, looks nice, all the way through.
Councilman,
We were talking about that, the land bank, I just gave that information to Ian, to, the programs, and it's on some website, so he's got it. That will help with that, because I do it, in my precinct, there's 20 vacant houses. The houses are just sitting there and they're just deteriorating, and, you know, some of them, I knew the people that lived there, and they were good houses, you know, but when people die, parents die or something, and they just let the house sit, when you start seeing animals coming back and forth, you know, the house is gonna be good for nothing, and that's what, and so that's why I was checking on that too, because we still have some houses around here that on the outside, they still look good. And so if somebody can get to them and make sure that the inside is not, tore up or wearing out or something, and get either the people to fix them up and sell them, or get them to do something with them, or.
Well, and that's one of the problems that we face with some of these houses, and just to give everybody an example, down on West End Street next to Bart Gladden's house, it's a beautiful house at one time, but it's completely deteriorated. If you go look at the GIS server and take an aerial photo, half the roof is missing from the house. The house went up for sale by the land bank, and it was bought by an LLC out of Lakeland, Florida, I think it was. They buy it for $1,800, and then they put it on the market for sale for $3,400, thinking they're just gonna turn over and make money. They never come here, they never look at it. They're not gonna pay a cent to anything to it, and in 3 years, it goes back on taxes and back to the land bank again if they don't sell it. And it's in such horrible condition. And then you run into the problem that we have is that we could make ordinances that would force them to do something with it, which they won't, and then come and enforce it and make it take it down, but then we don't have the money to tear it down. So, I mean, it's a catch-22 all the way around on how people do these things.
So we need to meet with them, with the land bank, to figure out how we can do something.
Right.
With
And a lot of
that,
times they'll show the picture of the house when the house looks good,
Looks
Right.
but they don't show the picture, that's what it is, the one across from me,
It's
they
kind
don't
of
show
normal.
what it's like.
and I think with that, we need to put back the rental certification program, because with that, the registration fees, we can create a fund where those fees go into, that we can address some of these blighted and abandoned homes within our community. We have to have the resources or funds available to take them down, so I would recommend that maybe, I don't know if it is some type of program, yeah, right, if you just keep it as a rental certification program, or.
Yes, we just have to make it our own, you know?
Do some research on some other areas. I mean, cities and come up with that.
Well, we had someone come in to, just for that. We had, some people come in that was from big time.
Yeah, they were the safe built people that came in and did the whole, like, we'll actually run the rental certification program, the fees that would be generated, like.
And they told us that we didn't necessarily have to do it exactly how they did it, that we could create our own out of it. So, you know, and they sent us all that information, so that's something we need to pull back out.
Something that came out of the discussion we just had that, I don't want to back up because I know we're on time, but I wanted to say maybe with a resident toolkit or like a little fact thing right here. Because we were talking about people don't know where to dump stuff, people don't know where to get stuff picked up, people don't know how to get their, how do we get certain cities, access city services and local things to be a homeowner or be a renter. So I was thinking some type of resident guide, again, that may not be something the city does on its own, it might be something they do with the chamber and other.
Created that.
So,
We all need a guy.
Yes, Councilman Lawler?
I think it would be really good to put that under the rental program, because when we had a meeting and was talking to some of the landlords, they were talking about how they could educate people that the actual renters about their rights and the people that are landlords, their rights. And so they were thinking about a guide for both people. So I think that would still be a good idea to put it there and there.
Your wishes, my opinion.
Yes, Councilwoman.
With regard to, creating more funds to address, the, speculation in different ways that people are invading our current laws, I think that enhancing our laws and working with the land bank could be a better first step, considering how much pushback we've gotten from our landlords in our community with regards to rental certification, and people across the board feeling like that additional financial burden should not be placed on them. I think that we could look into our laws to prevent some of the extreme cases that we're seeing right away as another immediate way to address that.
Councilwoman Jackson, sorry, Councilwoman Jackson, I heard that.
Yes, and then also I know we're talking about the cars, but the trash. That is heavy. The cars and trash.
The dumping.
Dumping, things that maybe should be actually going into some kind of storage, but there's no storage whatsoever. And it's just all over. I've driven through that whole area and other areas, and it is terrible.
I will give the city kudos, because ever since that new policy went into place about the dumping where the donation bins are, there are a couple bins that have all disappeared and
Yes.
gone. All
That
like,
worked very well.
wow, this happened, we did something,
Yes.
I'm really happy about that.
Like in like wooded areas or?
No, not just wooded area, their actual homes, so people. are
So like, people are putting stuff out that are not.
It's like, it's on their property, don't get me wrong, but it's very visible. It's trash, it's accumulation of, I mean, it can be wood, I'm just gonna be nice and say wood. It can be wood, they have vehicles, they have wood, they have trailer homes. You understand what I'm saying?
And to give you an example, we have a camper or a motorhome sitting up at the corner of Carson and Wild.
Yeah.
And I can't get it out of there because nobody will take it. The only way to get it out of there is to pay somebody to take it. Again, it's gonna cost us money to do that because there's no battery. It's not a car, it's not metal. And Zix won't tow it because they're afraid that it's actually gonna fall apart when they start moving it. It's in such bad shape. And so I'm running into a problem. How do I get it out of there? We can get it out of there, it's tagged, but I don't know how to get it out. So there's other problems that we run into like that too.
So are you, I mean, it's not just like a messy yard where it's littered with kids' toys, but it's actual
No.
garbage bags.
Yes, everything, yes.
And we've been
That
trying
is
to
what
address.
I've seen
Right.
so much. I kind of do a drive-by.
Right, we worked with someone the other day for 411 East Erie Street, I don't know if people saw, West Street. That first house past Peabody. And there was a lot of trash there, they cleaned up the trash on the outside, but there was a construction going out there. We posted it as, condemned, nobody can enter. When the officers went down there to evict people out of the house, they had 15 dogs living in the house. The house was disgusting. Needless to say, with that many dogs inside of it. So those things are happening and doing those things, it's just nobody really hears about some.
Right.
Okay, so are we good with this bucket? I know. Thumbs up? Yep. All right. Next bucket.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes.
Before we go on to the next bucket, another thing that, has been on my radar are our sidewalks and the safety and the maintenance and repairs. So I wanted to add that to the public infrastructure, but I also think that's important because we have residents paying to a sidewalk fund and now their sidewalks are not being repaired. I know they had for whatever length of time would be.
If I can, council already took action on what was in.
Right, so I'm offering a solution, which is for the city to make a statement that those funds that our residents paid into are being utilized. And then also offer what they should do with their sidewalk is not safe, because as it stands now, I'm having to go to our director of public works and he's having to take it case by case. So I think that if we made a statement saying, just sharing some of the specific language of that responsibility being on the resident, and that's where like the nuance comes in. If the tree is in the right of way and that's roots are, changing the sidewalk, whose responsibility is that? And that's an issue for so many different people. I think if we were proactive about sharing.
If I can, I would put that under the ordinance, because like Councilmember Craig, we have announced that is what the sidewalk improvement project that will be happening this summer is. We're using those funds to repair all of the ramps to make them ADA compliant for our community. I think we need to really re-educate our community on what the ordinances say, that sidewalks are essentially the homeowner's responsibility. So I would recommend putting that under city policy, just ordinance re-education or something.
Yes, Colin?
As far as, everybody knows that the sidewalks in the city are in poor shape. Conversations regarding those have gone back I think all the way back when Dr. Mitchell was the manager. And I think realistically, the way that the city is going to solve that on a citywide level is you're going to have to, at some point, set up what's called special assessment districts. Because charging each home $50 is obviously not going to do it. So you're going to have special assessment districts. People aren't going to like it because it's more money getting charged to individual properties, but that's the only way you're going to fix it. Short of some fantastic grants coming in, which I don't know how many sidewalk grants are, but most municipalities address this through special assessment districts. So.
And the ordinance is very specific. This has been one of my concerns, is that we're not addressing the ordinance the way it's written. It actually says that the Director of Public Services has to identify those houses that have to have their sidewalk repaired by early in June. I can't remember the date. There's actually a date there. At that point, they advise those houses that they have to repair those sidewalks within a period of time, and if it's not done within that period of time, then we repair the sidewalks and charge it back to the house through their taxes. So that's what the law says. That's what specifically it says, and that's what we're supposed to be doing, and we have not been following that for many years.
And that's why they have a problem.
Yeah.
Yes, Councilman Jackson.
I would agree with that. If we are supposed to, we need to, because I literally had to go out and take pictures from my sidewalk. Because they thought their sidewalk should be taken care of. But I didn't know I was doing it. So I took the picture and they said, you didn't ever come up there. I said, yes, I do. I have it. So that needs to be, because there's many people complaining about their sidewalks. Then our city needs to be updated about something, even about burning trash or burning leaves right in front of their yard. They're doing that too.
It is burning.
So is there a possibility that we could have like you were saying, a communication booklet, easy to read? This is what your city codes are for whatever, and create that. Because the only reason why I'm saying this is one of my residents has been very adamant that that's what Albion used to do a long time ago. They had, because he still has the old, and I can't probably know what I'm talking about.
We all
He
know.
still has,
We all know.
he has the old original booklet that they used to have that had the compliance stuff in there and what the codes were and stuff like that. And it's simple reading for residents.
Could we see that? So we
He's
can.
not gonna give it up.
No, I'm saying.
I mean, the online one is available, and it was just updated a year or so ago. And it's very easy to search. If you want to look up sidewalk, just type in sidewalk and it gives you all the sidewalk ordinances.
That's on the city.
But it's all on the city website, yes. Under, what is it?
Yeah,
but it's under, on the menu, the far left, whatever is government or wherever city council is. You go down there, it says Albion, city ordinances, and then it takes you to the page where you get to it. Once you're in Unicode, you can search it very easily.
I just wanted to add, my main concern is the fact that, in the two residents I've had to speak with, the tree that they did not plant that's in the right of way is obstructing the sidewalk, and they were told that it's on them, or the city's not going to handle it, and that's a liability issue, so I'm hoping that we can have more communication, and then either like spray paint the sidewalk, or do something to help people understand that, you know, somebody has paid attention to this, and watch where you're walking, anything to mitigate the potential that someone falls and that a household is responsible.
Just Councilwoman.
Well, thank you, Ms. Mayor. From the information that I got, it was one of our trees that's messing up the sidewalk that we would repair. Am I right? So that's just about information.
Yeah.
That I had gotten, and I'm just sharing it. Just right over.
Thank you.
Next budget.
Equitable, accessible redevelopment.
No, I didn't think so.
Clarify that.
Yeah, can you
Yeah,
clarify that comment, please?
please clarify that. I can hear that conversation.
May
So, I thought I heard that the question is whether if it's like roots from the city tree that tear up the sidewalk, is it the homeowner or the city's responsibility?
We've had homeowners be told that the roots are somehow their responsibility. And this is like absurd, so that's what I mean, and I'm trying to recall what.
So I would say we fall into the same thing as the tree fell down on their house. It's an act of nature that we're not responsible for. They're responsible for the repairs to that. So if a city tree falls down on your house, the city's not responsible for repairing your house. It's your insurance, your responsibility. And so I think the roots would be the same basis of that. It's not just because it's city tree on city right away, doesn't make it the city's responsibility to repair damage done by the tree.
But so does Colin have additional info for that?
I
So
mean,
then you two have different views then, that's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Well, the information I got came straight from downstairs.
Right,
So,
and I think, so my understanding is that it's the severity of the sidewalk being, harmed by the roots, you know, like how bad is that?
well, here's what you have to keep in mind as a council is, you know, you don't want, I don't think you want to get into a situation where it's, well, the city will address it based on severity, because you're gonna have differing opinions on what that is. And you're gonna have to
Exactly.
fix it for one homeowner and not another, and then it's gonna, then you know what a headache that's gonna turn into. It needs to be one or the other. It's either we do it or we don't, and I mean, just be as the attorney, I'm like, hey, if we've got governmental immunity, I say assert it, and you know, it's on, I know there's a large feeling that it's like, hey, let's do what's right is right, but it's like, no. But that's not always what's mandated by the law, so.
Can I just offer this up, because I don't think we're gonna solve this problem, but I want to offer up this anecdote that I deal with a lot when I talk to constituents in precinct 6 and others when we're just having lunch or talking about this as well. We all, especially homeowners, you know, we all purchase our homes, or they purchase their homes, and there are certain things that come with owning a home. And I have some residents who live on a street in Albion who are really irritated with street parking and with people being in the park so early in the morning. And they have a really great house, overlooks the river. It seems very charming, and they complain about it. And one of the things I have to share with them is that as long as someone's breaking the law, then we can't do anything about it. And also your neighbors need street parking, just like you may need street parking. And so there's not much that we are able to do about that. This is just this may be a drawback for you having this beautiful scenic space right in the middle of Albion. So when you buy a house and you purchase property, there are certain things that come with that, and it's really hard for homeowners to hear, like, we can't fix that, or we can't do anything about it, but it's true. I've been told that over and over again. I got this ugly curb put in right before I came on council. They put this black tarry curb instead of a cement curb, and I said, I can't, like, this is ugly and hideous. Well, too bad, stuff they were replacing curbs with. So just comes with owning a home, right? Like, and it sucks for me and it sucks for them too. So I just wanted to offer that up as an anecdote of what we're going to deal with for the next few years. Can I add something to equitable, accessible redevelopment?
Sure.
If we're ready to move on. I was going to and I don't know quite how to phrase it, so I don't want to write it out, but identify ordinances that may be, inequitable, right? Identify a city policy that needs to be changed to be more inclusive and open to our entire community. I think there's probably some work we could do there, but I don't know, does anyone have any other ideas about that?
Yes, Councilwoman.
So my understanding with the equity task force is that was gonna be kind of an integral part of that. And I know that there are organizations, because that's a lot of work, we keep talking about going back through. And I can only imagine what Attorney Harkness is thinking about this session, because all of this is a lot of work, and so, there are people who do equity, racial equity, audits of municipalities. So that might be something to consider investing in. But I think that in terms of this goal and your addition, our boards and commission, including the racial equity task force, having members is a key thing that we don't have yet. And that's some support that could help us as well. Just, I mean, I've been trying to recruit people.
So plan for recruitment and convening of the equity task force.
Yes.
Does everyone want that on there?
Sure.
I would say not only that, just Parks and Recreation, the advisory commission, there's only 3 members on that. We have several.
The arts.
So maybe make this more broad, plan for filling vacancies on boards and commissions, and then we need to say, because we're under this specifically, the equity task force, as a high priority, since it doesn't have any members.
Well, I have 2 folks that have said yes.
You have 2 folks that said yes. Oh, that's good news. That's great news.
Working on more.
I have a question for Attorney Harkness, if I ask. Is the rule about taxes, is that charter or is that ordinance?
What rule about taxes?
About being completely current on your taxes before serving on a board or commission? Is that charter? That's charter. Yeah.
Take your guess.
I mean, that could be another resource though, in terms of our guide to help folks who are unable, I think that's that's something that everyone, if there is, I don't know if there are any ways to help people who are.
So what are those, I can't see the yellow tags up under the equitable.
So we have housing, mission of veterans, neighborhood improvement, groceries, employment and entrepreneurship, aging in place and senior services.
So as far as groceries, are we talking about a grocery store? 'Cause it's still on the agenda.
I know that. I'm doing my job. I just don't report till I have things to tell you.
I don't think that's really great, but I would include that as like, that is a goal for like within our comprehensive plan. Because
Yes.
getting some, that's gonna take several
Mm-hmm.
years, not something that we can make happen within 1 year. So I think that it's still a very important goal, and I think we should save that for long-term vision for our community. I'd like to see a new grocery store.
Because we had some, to be honest and perfectly open and honest about it, we had somebody that was willing, and we were just looking at location stuff like that, COVID happened, right? But in the same token, what I didn't like about, when we were talking about this certain person, talking to this person, wanted some specific things to put in place to bring their business here. Me personally, was not for it. There was other people in the room and we discussed it, so what I said was, that'll be a discussion. So in the long period of saying that made me think differently. Then I started thinking, okay, well, maybe we don't need just a grocery store, maybe we need individual type markets that specialize in fishing meat or whole foods, or, something like that, where,
Specialized.
right. And so that's what I'm venturing like that.
So I was just gonna add, I think, and I'm gonna say this at the risk of being an outlier. Housing, groceries, employment, entrepreneurship, aging in place and senior, those are all like,
Easy.
no, I'm not gonna say that. Those are all amazing things that need to happen in our community. Of that, we have very little control, as a council. However, the one thing we do have as a council is that there's boards and commissions who work for us on various tasks. So like, when it comes to the grocery store and when it comes to housing, we have boards and commissions that are doing that. So maybe in that vein, we need to create I hate to keep saying the word communications, but we need to create a plan, because I think over the last couple of years, EDC and council haven't been close in communicating what's going on. So like, if I were to take it, if I were to do EDC, I'd think, oh, I'm just working my butt off, I'm trying to get this, COVID happened, we're getting money out, we're doing this, that, and the other thing. And from a council perspective, we don't see the feet, moving under the water at EDC, you think, oh, nothing's happened in it here. So I think, could we do something where we put together a more focused way to engage with, particularly the EDC, and the housing authority, Albion Housing Commission, more regularly, that way we know what's going on and can have a part of that process, so that we don't feel so like nothing's happening or nothing's going on. Does that make sense to you?
Could I add to that we advocate for these goals, which I believe are already included in our comprehensive plan, but like we could, continue to build on for our updated plan?
Yes, Councilman Clark.
And the focus is, they. The focus is more of making sure that we understand the broad perspective of everything else that's going around us. And how we can, start to get those developers and people that are doing things around us.
I think, look, Councilman Clark, being mindful of the development that's going into surrounding communities and what active steps can we take to market our community to bring those types of developments into our city. I don't know how we want to label that.
Well, so that's what the whole RRC was. It's like we're attracted to development. And so just being informed about, what RRC entails, I think is a great thing that we could do, building on our RRC certification.
So say that again.
So the fact that we were a redevelopment ready community, we're certified, and that comes with different things. So the more we equip ourselves with the knowledge of those best practices, those resources, I think that can help us, build our connection with our local economic development corporation. That's just one pathway, because that's how we become attractive. Or that was, I should say it started in 2016.
So if you kind of look at what happened, it was more of our community with people that were already developers in our community that already had money that wanted to develop within our community. What you're saying, that's what happened in that, during that time. I'm talking outside of that,
Right.
where there's more development, where there's different type of businesses that's going to other cities around us, and we're not markets.
I understand. No, I totally understand. And what I'm saying is that RRC has, I'm gonna send it.
Through the RRC program, they have the tools for us to attract these type of developments that you are mentioning or thinking of.
So we already had those in place, they just weren't doing it. That's what I'm hearing.
No, we didn't have this stuff in place. Dr. Mitchell had worked a lot of things in place, but the new zoning ordinance that we did and several of the other things that we had to accomplish in the city to make it attractive for businesses to come here were done through the RRC. So the city itself is prepared. Now we need to market, as you're talking.
And what I'm saying is that I think that the more we as council members read through that material, the easier we can advocate whether we're sitting in any setting, you know what I'm saying, as a whole, because that is really the pathway to it. Sorry, there was another thing I wanted to say. Oh, community benefits agreement. That is not typically something a public entity would do, but I think that when we're talking about equitable redevelopment, a CBA and those resources.
So do we need to develop a community benefits?
No, but just, I can provide us with a toolkit to basically have that just be another resource. We're talking about all these different guides and resources. So that's just something to put on our radar. It's actually something, it's like a legal binding document a private entity would do to ensure that the community is benefiting.
Now, Shane, just remember that city clerk and me needs to be able to decipher what they're putting up there.
Don't worry, I can interpret her, let's live it for you.
I just feel bad, you're like, oh.
I know.
Listen, these are like popcorn walls, okay? Like it's.
I know, so I was like, yes, Councilman Lower.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. I just want us to keep in mind that, you know, some of the things, I'm hearing is, well, we don't have enough control over this or that, but we actually make the policies and laws for our city. So we do have some control over some things, not all, but I just want us to keep in mind that we as council can set policies and set the laws. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there, that, you know, we have power to do it.
Oh, so it's with regard to the CBA, I just found this out that in order for the community to actually feel that benefit, you don't want to have the government negotiating that contract, have to be a private legal binding entity that would have more leverage, if that makes sense.
That's not what she's saying.
Okay.
We actually, like I said, we set the laws and the policies. I'm not saying that we have to,
She's just saying, if I can interpret for you.
okay.
She's saying, if we're the ones that put the laws and policies in place, then at that point, when these laws and policies are not being moved forward, then that's when we have the power to ask the questions of why and have the movement happen, to have those things happen or correct it. That's what she's saying, right, Marco? Okay.
All right, team, are we done with this bucket?
All right, on to the next.
So intergovernmental / institution relations, because not all of this is government, right? Like it's our government with multiple institutions. So can I start?
Go ahead.
I put it up there. I would like to kind of task the city manager and the city with gaining an understanding of the specifically college development, and we can group economic development in here, but like figure out what's going on and bring it to the city for what is happening. I think we all feel a certain level of information loss as to what is taking place in the community, and there are lots of plans floating around, and, pictures of redeveloped properties and things. And so I want to really task with getting understanding with the city and the college of what's going on and what's happening and how we're partnering in any sort of way, because anyone who's building a business or doing any changes in the community has to come through the city for these things. And so it'd be good to know what's going on right up front and figure out a way forward. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm gonna wing it, and then we're gonna wordsmith it. It's all college wrong. See, I should. Because I'll just use a really easy one, for example. I saw a really great article about these cute little goats that the president has on campus. And literally the article was like, when the ordinance changes in the community, these two goats are ready to start living on campus. So we better start working with the college a little more closely to figure out, like, that's a big change. We just got chickens a few years ago. How are we gonna massage goats? So I thought it would be really good for our city manager and our city hall to be working with the college, one of our biggest institutions, to make sure that we're working together in alignment with what's going on.
So,
I would also want to include healthcare, you know, because there's so much going on with Oakland. And there'll be healthcare alliance right now. It'd be good to know if the city and those organizations are in alignment in their future and how they're, you know, serving citizens. Does that make sense to you?
Mhm.
So I'm gonna put like ditto, hospital/healthcare.
So explain that again, please.
So there's a lot changing right now in the community around healthcare, access to healthcare, resources, and then with Oakland having their clinic and their clinic, from what I understand, their clinic is doing really well. This could be a point where we figure out how the city can be helpful to expanding those services, right? That clinic's great, you probably know that they could serve more. Or getting in line with the healthcare alliance, as they roll out with their Healthy Babies Day activities, they take on more senior services. They're offering a ton of new services out of that building right now. And then also, Summit Point is also a major mental health player, and what they're doing in County with their emergency, their mental health emergency room, which is incredible. So I thought we would want to make sure the city is in alignment with these big entities making big changes in our community. And I'll say this because we always feel like we don't know what's going on, that we get that sense on council. And if we're already in alignment with what they're doing and getting regular updates through the city manager, then we don't have to be out of step. And this one doesn't have to be big. Like I knew it was big enough that it needed to be a bucket, but I wanted to make sure. Ms. Mayor, are you okay with these?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the other buckets, we have more of,
Tangible.
yeah, but then the communication stuff, though, I mean, that's just not something that we're gonna be able to track and report back, like, how can we quantitatively measure, you know, these things are happening.
Well,
You get to an extent, I think with town hall meetings, if we get one scheduled or a couple scheduled for this year, that I would take that as a win. It's,
Yeah, I'm talking about what we were putting in under the relationship, the government and,
you want something that you can easily track, like,
yeah, because I think, you know, that makes sense. And city manager Snyder can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume she does have regular meetings with folks from the college.
Sure.
She has regular meetings with folks from the Healthcare Alliance and.
well, then we can collapse this into kind of, are you communicating with council about what's going on with those entities? And we could just dip that down in our communications, and I would be okay with that. I just thought that those bigger entities, not just the college, the hospital included, Healthcare Alliance, some of these anchor institutions, it's important that we know what's going on.
Yeah.
So we could, you know, if everyone's okay, we can just collapse that down and get one. Is everyone okay with that?
That would, since you're driving it, you know.
yeah, I would know.
I was just gonna offer, I mean, part of what I was saying, about like data and research is like, and knowing how many people from Albion are using any service at all, much less a new service. Is kind of getting to your point, how do we know that anything that we're advocating for or, you know, putting on folks' radar is actually reaching people? So I would just, ask that in those relations, those conversations, the rollout of anything new, that we are tracking the usage and, you know, how, whether it's somebody's health outcome or, you know, economic development, you know, people's incomes, education, in as many ways as we can measure Albion residents' benefit of these things, having that be part of, you know, just the conversation.
Councilman Jackson.
Yeah, so, what you're saying is, I agree with that, but both of those entities can tell you, already how much Oakland is using for our people coming to them, and then also, Albion, Health Alliance can too. Because whenever you call and ask them, they will say, well, there's so many that come from Albion, some that come from Homer, and so forth. So if she does have this relationship with them, she can bring it back already without going any further with that.
Councilman Lloyd.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. So I didn't see anything about, what Councilmember Clark was talking about as far as, her wanting to do, speaking of trivia, about her entryways, about the entryway on, on what street, is it, Austin Ave and, Eaton. So that would be, she wanted to
Do you want like revitalization of the entryways?
ask her, it was her idea. You know,
So when we were talking about.
how are you saying that the entryway of the businesses
Oh,
on,
business, group, as far as creating more business. in that
on
area.
Austin Ave
Yeah.
and on
And
Eaton,
then-
is that up under there somewhere? I know she had her.
I would say that's the one that we're focused, the second one that we put.
I was gonna say Austin Ave.
Yeah, I think that's the one that it would fall under that.
We can put a sub Austin Ave for you. Jill, I do have time, don't worry this week, I'll come sit down in your office. If I'm asked and I can't read it out, I know I can. Okay,
So it's Austin Eaton and
Austin and
Eaton, yeah.
Austin.
All right, we're good with that bucket?
Yeah.
All right, thank you all.
What is the last one?
Grant and resources.
We're doing good. So, do we currently have grant writers?
Yeah, we utilize.
Only one is city manager, that's it, right?
City manager and then our lovely department heads.
So what's the city's position in that? Can we, obtain a grant writer specifically? Because, I've said this before, and so keep it legal over here. Grant writers, proficient grant writers you pay them a small amount compared to what they actually do with the grant itself. Their salaries actually come out of the administrative part in the grant writing itself. A good grant writer knows that. So when we were talking about that at one time, there was a mention about how could we pay that person, and I said that, I threw that out a couple times, but I don't think people understood that it's not illegal. That's how the grant itself is set up. When you're a grant writer, there's administrative cost that's attached to your grant writing process that you pay your salary out. Only a small amount of it comes out of whoever hired that person. Correct?
No, not almost.
Some of them.
You're almost there. So you really are, you're on the right track. So first of all, in fundraising, it's not a practice to then get paid out of what you get. Usually what you do is you pay a grant writer a normal salary or an hourly wage. What you're referring to in the admin part of the grant, the admin part of the grant actually eventually could be used to pay the grant writer. But what it is it's really 10 to 15% of the grant that's used to pay for administrative costs for getting the grant, which could include a grant writer.
Right.
So I agree with you. I like the idea of having like an hourly grant writer or figuring out a situation where we could have someone strictly focused on resources. We should not bet the farm that their grants will pay for their salaries. That just may not be the case. I think those two things are separate because a good fundraiser would not sign up for a gig where they got paid for what they get. There'd be a lot of unemployed. So what I'm offering is a plan for procuring resources, who's in charge of writing grants, if it is department heads, if it is, and what's the plan for procuring grants and federal and state funding. That's what I was getting at with this, and I do with you prefer to have someone in the city focused on it. I know there's enough pockets of money to add for that, but if city administration is looking and saying you don't have the money for that, what are we gonna cut? I want a plan for writing grants, and I want there to be a goal for how much we can bring into the city. You know what I mean? Is that comfortable for people? City Manager Snyder?
Councilwoman Lauer.
I'm looking at that, like, no, I was just gonna say, so are we, trying to ask city manager, if she can get another, position as far as staffing, is that what you're asking?
What he said was, you know,
No, go ahead.
what he said was, so let's put all the pots. All these different organizations that we have currently that have department heads that necessarily can't write grants at this point to the level of what we need or want. He would like for Haley to visit that to see if in that full spectrum of everybody involved, if we can look at that. Have a grant writer, in opposed to automatically creating a position. That's what I heard you say. Is that what you said? More or less?
Sure.
So,
I wanna know, I just wanna know what are we gonna go after? A dollar goal is always good, even if we don't reach it.
right,
Because as we've seen, City Manager Snyder can give us $1 million grant like that sometimes, with that one road grant. But other times she probably can't get the $5,000 grant that's just down the road available for us. So,
right.
and that has nothing to do with City Manager Snyder's skills, everything to do with funders. I just wanted to make, I know that the grant writing and fund development has been a goal of council for a long time, because we know that we like having that money flowing in, and we've always had usually have had talented people doing that, and I think we still do. But I think we want to have a plan and we want to make it a priority. And hopefully this might be a challenge growth area at the city, because it's hard to focus on this because it's not immediate money in the door and it's not fixing the drain.
Right, and like right now is the specific time where all the money that's been allocated to different agencies that to do certain different things, if they haven't spent it by right now this is when you rewrite the grants, like that one grant that you wrote that last time for the people to get the repairs in their houses. That's where that money came from, and I understood what happened when it went away, because there's only a window of time that happens. So in other words, I'm gonna use names so it'll make more sense to you. I wrote a grant and it was for $100,000, and I only used $10,000 of it, so $90,000 is still available. So Lynn can now write for the remaining amount of that grant, that specific grant money that wasn't used, and utilize it in her county, because it wasn't used in the county that it was deemed to. So that's what grant writers can do for us. They kind of watch.
Depends on what's stipulated in the contract. Yeah, if it doesn't have the same thing that Lynn.
Oh, I understand that, yeah, but it's like if it's a rehousing grant, for instance, if it's rehousing, to develop rehousing and to help build, and she didn't use all that money, and that I need that money, but I didn't use it, so she needs that money, so she writes that grant, and then they just did it, because the idea is to spend all the money that was out. The government don't like when you spend. That's what I'm trying to say.
So can we use the NEP for grant resource?
We have it listed over here under partners, I believe, NEP specifically.
There you go. I'm just going to see.
Councilwoman Liddell?
I just wanted to offer, my understanding of this process is that we wouldn't have to create a position and have benefits and everything. This could be work that someone would contract for and would, that make it that much more affordable for us. It wouldn't have to be a permanent position for the city. It could be a contract-based job.
Shane?
So I was wrong, but I think what we're saying as council to the city manager is that this is such a priority that we're willing to budget for this in a way that works for you. That way, the burden of grant writing and resource development doesn't fall squarely just on the city manager or her department head. We care about this so much that we are committing, because we're making this a goal, we're committing that we will put some resources to this to make it happen. Because I can feel all the way across the room a little bit of nervousness over there. And that's okay, so I just wanted to say out loud to let you exhale that we think it's so important. We will put resources or allocate resources to this because we think it's that important.
Well, I guess that's the council decision, right?
Right.
How much we're saying?
How much, and
Yeah,
she's gonna come back to us and say I'm gonna need this to execute these goals. That's the plan tonight, right? We're gonna walk out of here, we're gonna leave these buckets with her in a much neater form. And then City Manager Snyder's gonna come back after talking to the department heads and their staff and say, here's what we can do, and here's the timeline, here's what these look like, and then here's what I need, moving forward. And then we, at that time, might decide it's too expensive, or, oh no, we're gonna do it, right? I just wanted to say, if we think it's that important, we're gonna put resources to it.
All right. Yes. Councilwoman Jackson.
It's simple, it's not hard. I just didn't know, I guess basically where to state it or put it, but that contaminated area on Dalrymple Street, I would be wrong if I never said anything about that. That needs to go underneath one of those buckets.
And I can say that is being addressed, that can actually go under RRC, because that is one of our 3 priority sites that we are marketing, to kind of get assistance to bring a developer in to do something like that.
Because I never heard anything about it, so that's been on my heart to mention that.
Yeah, that needs to be done.
Yes, it
Yes,
does.
Councilman Ross.
Okay, thank you.
Can you find somewhere to put, to address homeless? Over there on Dalrymple, I see it. Out in the Park, I see it. In Malibu Park, in the bathrooms, I see it.
So this is just information. So the Harlan Creek that was controlling all the fiduciary for all that type of money has just retracted their position. And that is available for whomever would like to apply to become the Howard that allocates that kind of money for homelessness and housing and stuff like that.
Can you repeat that, please, at the beginning, you have to miss that.
So the Howard will count that all the money was controlled, they were the fiduciaries, just retracted themselves from it. Now the application is open for whomever would like to become the Howard and the fiduciaries for this county for that type of money. So where it was in Battle Creek, it could be anywhere in the town, just let me know.
I put it equitable, and accessible.
And I will, Councilmember Lovett, I actually had a conversation with Councilmember Williamson as he's over the Community Foundation about getting the homeless shelter open, and we need to do something for our community. So I don't know if, yes, we are looking into doing something.
We need to take a field trip this year because a new homeless shelter model opened up in Battle Creek, funded by the foundation in Battle Creek. And it's a non-religious based, open and affirming type of shelter. And it might be good to go take a field trip and see what they do. It's not owned by the city, but the city is obviously a partner.
Hey.
But that's in Battle Creek. Right?
Yeah, that's not
Battle
Elgin.
Creek get all the money, we need some over here too.
So that's why I just said what I just said.
That's what I said. All right, are we all good? We feeling good about this? I am happy. I am happy.
There, I will report.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so, Chief County. Nope. Floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So I just wanted to provide council with an update. Water shutoffs will resume on May 12th. So I wanted to kind of announce this. The process moving forward, disconnection notices will be mailed out with brochures for assistance. Information included attached to that, and door hangers will be issued tomorrow on April 1st to all delinquent accounts in all 3 sections. By May 3rd, 50% of that past due or delinquent balance must be paid, with the remaining balance with either payment arrangement scheduled with our utility office, but something has to be put in place by May 3rd. So that's why we're trying to get this information out, encouraging our residents, please contact Lindsay within the utilities department to schedule, if you need to schedule payment arrangements or whatnot, please do that. Also, if you need assistance, please take advantage of Community Action Agency as well as NDHHS. I provided you with the brochure that will be mailed out. So if you have any residents, please who are asked to please provide them with one. And then disconnections will take place on May 12th, so we're giving more, I think, of enough time to people trying to get their delinquent accounts taken care of. So I just wanted to bring that to people's attention because those notices will go out tomorrow, so if you do receive any calls or whatever, encourage them, provide them with the information to seek assistance if needed. Oh, and just a reminder, City Hall will be closed on Friday in observance of Good Friday.
So just reiterate, water shut off May 12th. Notices go out tomorrow, April 1st. Something has to be put in place by May 3rd or shut off will happen.
Come May 12th, yes.
Good enough. All right, council members' comments. Where we all talked about.
We talked about.
Yeah, don't change.
I'm not. No, but you got me in person. No, you got me in person. I've been cooped up in this house. I'm ready to talk. No, actually, I'll be really brief. This was a lot of fun tonight. This was exciting. This is productive. This is real. I am thrilled. I think other folks that either watch this on playback or whoever watched it on the internet would be thrilled to see us working collaboratively together on these goals and trying to put some teeth to something and make something happen. So this is really, really exciting. We have not had this yet on council since I've been on it, and I'm just thrilled.
And
So
as
thank
Linda
you.
says, you have to work with city clerk.
Yes, don't worry.
Shane will be happy to take this home and put it all together for you.
We get a copy of this all put together.
Shane's got it.
No, you gotta email it to us, Shane.
I'll do it. Let me just take the photos.
We
All
got
right.
it.
Oh, wait, but we may be stepping on city clerk.
She knows it.
She's happy. She's not a union employee. She's happy. to
Not
do
this
this.
time.
Take all the paper home.
Oh,
Yeah, take them all.
I want those. I was thinking
Okay, you want to take
about
pictures first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just had to go.
Shane, I mean,
She wants
my
it.
time, I was gonna put them in my office.
Okay, well then I will take pictures and you can have them.
Yes,
I
council.
would like to say that the same thing, that this was a very productive meeting. And also, again, I believe in giving people praise where praise is due. Ms. Snyder, City Manager Snyder, is working on some things that you guys have not, because we're working on some things together that we haven't been able to bring up forth, and it is developers outside of the area. I talked today, and I haven't told you about this, but I talked today to someone that's set up to build tiny houses, has the money, has the developers, has the contractors, have all that ready to go. Just wants to know some of the parcels in the area to make sure that we don't violate any of the city ordinances where they can put these houses and then for veterans.
Okay.
So I'll give you that information. So we can get it going, and the money, the loans and everything is all there, and the upkeep of the property. The city like this, we don't have to worry about, because it's all going to veterans. So,
We included that in our new zoning ordinance that we did, so they're good anywhere.
okay.
Let me get that ordinance.
So I will get the information to, city manager, so she can put it out in the newsletter, and you guys started putting that in the ears of some of your veterans. And I saw the pictures of the tiny houses and stuff and what they'll look like, and some of them are all one level, some of them, like some of the other ones have a little small upstairs, but.
Yes, cool. Councilman Reed.
No, I was just listening to what she was saying, and the land bank, we made we took a trip to Lansing last year, and we saw all of that being done, and, I was just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Yes. All right, nothing else to be said. I'll call this meeting, well, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So.
Support.
Second.
City clerk, make a roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Reed, Jackson,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes?
Lanu,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Snyder.
Yes, so I call the meeting to adjournment at 8:50.